So good evening. This is meeting number 4 of the Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting. I'm Councillor William Riley. I'll be chairing tonight's meeting. This is just a note to members of the public due to the efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 and to protect all individuals. Council chambers will not be open to the public to attend standing committee and council meetings until further notice. The public may submit comments for matters that are on the agenda to jdyson@westlincoln.ca before 4:30 on the day of the meeting. Comments submitted will be considered public information and will be read into the public record. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and it will be available on the township website. So at this point, I'll acknowledge that Councillor Rayner has sent his regrets, and at the time being, we're just Councillor Harold Yonker, I believe, is just be joining us shortly. And so that being said, I'm going to go and read the land acknowledgement statement that the Township of West Lincoln, being a part of the Niagara region, is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Haudenosaunee and the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe people, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Union. There are many First Nations, Métis, Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Township of West Lincoln, as part of the regional municipality of Niagara, stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. So at this point, I'll look around and see if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest. Not seeing.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that Harold can't find the link to this meeting, but he will be joining us in the closed, if that's legal, I suppose. But he has the link for the confidential, so he'll be joining us there.
So if you could just relay to him, the other link came out Friday at 12:17, so sometimes it gets lost. So if he just searches in his email the deputy clerk's name, that should bring that up, but that should be no problem. That being said, I still don't see or hear any conflict of interest, so we're going to go right into the next item, which is confidential matters, and that the recommendation that the next portion of this meeting be closed to the public to consider the following pursuant to Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001. And it's Township Solicitor Tom Richardson and Director of Planning Brian Treble, and it's a legal solicitor-client privilege. First item is crossing on the 20. The applicable closed session exemptions are litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and or advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And then the other matter we'll be talking about will be Township Solicitor Tom Richardson and the Director of Planning and Building Brian Treble, and it's a solicitor-client privilege matter regarding woodland tree cutting. And the applicable close exemption is the advice to the advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. So at this point, I'll ask to see if I can get a mover and a seconder to go into close. I have Councillor Gannan and Councillor Braderick. I'll call the question. All those favor to go into close? And that carries. So at this point, any of those who are watching, we'll be back shortly, and we'll come out of close hopefully sooner rather than later. All right, welcome back. Thank you for being patient there. That took us a little longer than expected. But at this point, sorry, just get the wrong paper in front of me. So at this point, I'm gonna get a mover in a second to go back into open. So I have Councillor Ganan and Mayor Bilsma. So I now resume this meeting at 7:29 p.m.
Should take up a vote, but
Oh, correct. My apologies. So at this point, I'm going to call the question to open back in open session. So all those in favor? All right, excellent. Got ahead of myself. Thank you for catching that, Mr. Mayor. So we're now back open, still at 7:29 p.m. I'm going to read the open session directive. So that item P36 2022 Township Solicitor Tom Richardson and Director of Planning and Building Brian Treble, legal solicitor client privilege, and our open legal on the crossings on the 20, and our open session directive is that the township staff and legal counsel be and are hereby authorized to proceed as directed in closed session through the implementation of the original draft plan of condominium approval from 2009. So I'm going to need a mover for that. I have Mayor Bilsma and Councillor Trombetta. Any comments or questions this time? Not seeing or hearing any, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that carries. And so now we'll move forward to our next item, which is our planning meeting. Okay. Stay with me for a second. Just making sure they're lined up correctly. They are. Okay. So we're going to start the planning meeting. For the purpose of this meeting is to give an opportunity for the public and members of council to provide comments and or ask questions regarding importing of fill on lands owned by P-Bud Development, Inc. for the property legally described as Plan M94, Lot 1, Plan 30, M300, PT Lots 12 and 13, and RP 30R 15516, Parts 1 and 2 off of South Grincy Road 5 in Smithville, north of the CP rail line, and the approval of a site alteration application. This is just to notify that the public notice was circulated to applicable agencies and neighboring properties within 120 meter radius of the proposed project site on March 22nd, 2022. Will the Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble, please explain the purpose and reason for this public meeting with respect to the site alteration application, file number 3000-00222, submitted by Rankin Construction, Inc. on behalf of P-Bud Development, Inc.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll give a quick overview, and then we're here to hear any questions or comments that might come from the neighbors and the public. So this is an early approach at attempting to start the engineering works with respect to a draft approved plan of subdivision that Mr. Peter Budd received approval for late last year. And in order to commence the work, they have been working with detailed engineering, trying to make sure that they can design sewer and water systems for the expanded area. And in order to get a sewer system that works on a gravity feed, they basically have to raise the lands of this new development up on the South Grimsby 5 side, which is the west side of the parcel in question. It's close to a 2-meter increase in fill that has to happen over there, but that's to get the slope in order to make a gravity system work. That's in simple terms, that's the science behind what we're dealing with. There are some changes that occur over beside the existing residential lots that back onto this development that front Last Road as well. And there are some swales that have to prominently be positioned in that area, but then the land slopes up as we go to the west. So my understanding in sort of simple terms is that phase 1 is pretty much all of the land across the bottom of his lot, from the backs of the units on Last Road over towards South Grimsby 5, north of the railway track. In that area, excuse me, some 35,000 to 40,000 cubic meters of fill is required. So that's 3,500 to 4,000 truckloads of fill. We've been, or we are now in receipt of a truck route plan that we're talking, planning staff are talking to Public Works about. There will be an agreement, there will be securities, all of that kind of stuff is yet to come because this is just the public consultation. My understanding, however, is that the fill that's brought in for this phase will then sort of be eventually pushed north as other phases unfold. So, you know, when they dig the foundations and the footings out for the new houses, that fill will go to the next phase, and this fill will be enough ultimately for the whole development. They require it now, but it will ultimately be phased out across the entire development up to the extension of Spring Creek Road once the entire site is filled. So through you, Mr. Chair, that I think maybe what I wish to say for now, and we're open to hearing what the public has to say before we come back with a recommendation report next month.
All right. Thank you. So I'm going to go to, I guess, to see if the property owner or authorized agent is here to speak to this. So do we have the agent or the property owner in attendance with us that would like to address this? Do we have anybody in the gallery? I'm not seeing anybody pop up here. See if there is one. Oh, we got Peter Budd here, so if we can permit Peter Budd to talk. All right, Mr. Budd, if you can just, for the record, even though I can see your name. Is that you? Just for the record, if you could just state your name and address, that would be great, and then you can proceed. You're still muted, though, just to let you know.
Yeah, sorry about that. Peter Budd, 6 Admiral Circle, Grimsby. I think Mr. Treble has given a fairly good explanation of what we're attempting to do there, and I'm here basically to answer any questions that may arise throughout the process.
Okay, thank you. In the meantime, can you just lower your virtual hand there, and then that way, if you want to chime in later, you can just raise it again. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to ask if there are any oral written submissions from anyone present on the Zoom meeting regarding the proposed site alteration application. If any members of the public that are in attendance tonight would like to make comments or provide written comments, they should do so by using one of the two options. The option one is using your computer or smartphone. You just got to select the raise your hand control, which can be found in the Zoom options, listed in the display screen. And two, if you had called in, which I don't think I saw one, but if you did, using a landline or telephone, you just hit *9, and that notifies us that you've raised your hand. I do ask that once you've been acknowledged to speak, to unmute your microphone, and once you've finished, you can remute your microphone again. And prior to speaking, you just need to provide your name and address. So at this point, we'll look, Kevin, I'll go to you to see if there's anybody in the gallery that would like to speak to this. Not seeing, we'll give them an extra couple of seconds here. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to move to members of committee. Any members of committee would have any oral written submissions on the proposed site application. For those who are with us virtually, we do ask that you unmute your microphone, and then when you're done talking, or remute your microphone. So I see Mayor Bilsma's hand up first, and then I got Councillor Ganan.
So thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you then to, I'm going to go to our Director of Planning, but Mr. Budd, I'm thankful that you also showed up this evening. Topsoil is very, quite valuable. So I'm assuming like most site preparations, most of the topsoil will be stripped off, set aside. The fill that's necessary will be brought in, and once the sites, the sites are all balanced out, that topsoil will be used to put it back on top, and we won't be burying any precious topsoil. I've seen that all too often where people just dump very low quality soil on top of, it's West Lincoln. I understand it's not Iowa, but it's still valuable to us, and we don't have to truck it from Iowa. So that's part of the site plan process, Mr. Director.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's my understanding that Mr. Budd is actually working on installing siltation fencing as we speak, and I think that will be his first order of business. The topsoil will be relocated, and my understanding from discussions that he's had with Mr. John Schoenwell, our CBO, that they're putting the fill down, and then the topsoil will be sprinkled over top of the fill to sort of complete the project. That's my understanding, which sounds like exactly the right way to do it.
Okay, thank you. That's my only concern.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will note real quick, I know there's a question submitted on the chat. We cannot accept questions submitted on the chat. Quite frankly, I'm not too sure why the chat's even available. I will come back to the gallery if people were unaware of that. You do need to put your name forward and actually put it on public record if you want those questions addressed in any capacity. But we will let members of the committee go forward, and then I'll give you guys a chance to come back. So in the meantime, Councillor Ganan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question for Mr. Budd regarding the timing of this. So we have a meeting tonight, and we'll have a technical report. And when it comes back as a recommendation report, I'm wondering when, Mr. Budd, you're planning to start this, keeping in mind that many residents have already expressed concerns about the dirt and the dust and so on during the course of the summer months. So I guess I just openly like to hear what your time frame is with this moving forward, please.
Yep, you're recognized, Mr. Budd.
Yes, as Mr. Treble has noted, we have already started putting up the silt fence for the stripping of the topsoil. The topsoil stripping has commenced in a minor way. It'll be stockpiled on the phase 2 land, so it won't be affected, and it'll be stored there until we have brought the grades up to a level where the topsoil can be placed back down after construction is completed and services are completed. And then we'll do it phase by phase. We'll do basically the same process, strip 2, strip 3, and shuffle the topsoil around until it's all placed back on the site. As far as the fill is concerned, it's our intention, I noted in your comments, one of the conditions is you didn't want any stockpiling on the site. So once we have the topsoil down, we will start placing the existing fill that was brought into site on previous applications, and it will be spread and packed first. And at that time, we will start trucking the fill from the off-site location, which is coming from East Hamilton area. It's being tested, and it is class 1 fill, which is about as clean and as good as it gets, and that's why we're anxious to get it to the site so we don't have any problems or issues. And once that is placed, we'll be in a position, we're hoping to commence that, weather permitting, in potentially 2 to 3 weeks. We'll be in a position to start trucking the new fill on. And all things being equal and in good conditions, it's about a 68-week process to place all the fill.
Thank you very much. That was a good, thorough answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Budd. If you can lower your virtual hand again, that'd be great. Oh, and then I thought I had Councilor Brevik, but not. Any other members of committee have any other questions or comments? Not seeing or hearing any. I'm going to go back, give the public one more chance to speak. I noticed there's a couple people who'd asked some stuff in the chat there, which I haven't really even read fully. Just whenever people start trying to create communication on questions, we have to refrain from that. That has to be addressed publicly that all the community can see. So those members, if they'd like to actually ask that question publicly, they can do so now. I'll give you about 5 or 10 seconds here, just in case you're trying to figure out how to do that. So I'm not seeing anything, and I'm just going to take a quick second here to actually ask a question. Just give me a second. So where is... Okay, so Amy, I'm going to ask, I see your hand raised now. There's a bit of a delay here on my side. So Amy, if Amy could be permitted to speak here. Perfect. Amy, I just ask for your full name and your address, and then you can ask your question.
Hello?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, can you hear me?
I can. Can you just provide your full name and your address for the record, please?
Perfect, yeah. So it's Amy Smith, and I'm at 31 Less.
Excellent. Thank you, Amy. Proceed.
Thank you. So my property butts up right against, kind of near the tracks there. And I noticed that there is that temporary fence that's been put on my property, so I have property behind the wooden fence that's there. I didn't know that was going up, so I guess I'm just looking for a more succinct timeline as to when there's going to be some disruption. I also have a pool on my property that I'm concerned about. potential damage, and when the fence comes down or whatnot, having access to my property. So again, I wasn't made aware that that fence was going up, and I'm kind of noticing that my neighbor's doing some work on his property to remove some things to make way for this. So it would be nice if we were given advance notice and a timeline as to when people will be entering my property.
Okay, so I'll go to our director to speak to this first, and we'll go from there.
Mr. Chair, I'll start by basically saying that the township isn't involved in any access to private property as part of this process. If there is anything of that nature occurring, I'm assuming that Mr. Budd can speak to that. It's not something that we can authorize, nor have we authorized.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Budd, you can, I see you've raised your hand, so you can proceed.
Yes, the property in question, I have a contractual obligation, and I've come to arrangements with 4 property owners. There's a berm that was placed when we did the original development, Station Meadows property. And I have come to an agreement with 4 property owners, and we're going to take down the sound fence that's on top of that berm and regrade it and do some work on that. That will be one of the very first things we do once we start placing the fill. We need to build the area up on my side of the property line before we can get access into their yard. But those 4 yards will be one of the first things we do after the fill that is in question right now is placed. So if all goes according to plan and this is passed and accepted, once again, we should be in a position to start those works in 2, 3, 4 weeks, weather permitting.
Okay, so approximately within a month's time?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
But I will be coming around when I have a confirmed date and giving a week or 2's notice. So.
Okay. Amy, does that satisfy your question there?
Yeah, the advance notice would be great.
Excellent. So, that being the case, I'm going to go back to the gallery one more time to see if, sorry, Amy, did you have any other questions before I leave you?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you could just mute your side, that'd be great. And then in the meantime, I'll just go back to the gallery one more time just in case. Not seeing or hearing anyone else, so we'll proceed forward. And so I am to read that please be advised that a technical report is, Please be advised that a technical report is being considered by committee this evening and that a recommendation report will be forthcoming at a future committee and or council meeting. If members of the public wish to be notified by this council's decision, please ensure that you email the township clerk, Joanne Shime, at jshime@westlincoln.ca. Anyone who is interested in observing council and or committee discussions about a particular issue are suggested to watch the township website for posting of agendas to review the items that will be discussed at council and or committee meetings. The agendas for meetings are posted on the township website approximately after 4 p.m. on the Friday prior to the meeting. Additionally, meeting schedules are also noted on the township website for the public to view. So at this point, with the public meeting with respect to the proposed site alteration application is concluded at the hour of 7:47 p.m. We'll move on to the next public meeting. All right, meeting number 2. This is a public meeting to consider a zoning bylaw amendment application for MPG Planning Solutions on behalf of CA Real Estate Holdings for the property located at 197 Griffin Street, file number 1601-00522. The Planning Act requires in section 3412 that before passing a zoning bylaw amendment, council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. The purpose of the public meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public regarding a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by MPG Planning Solutions on behalf of CA Real Estate Holdings. We stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, and any comments received will be taken into account by council in their decision or consideration. I should also note that the Planning Act requires through Section 3413 that council advise the public that if a person or public body does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or a written submission to the Township of West Lincoln before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of a council for the Township of West Lincoln to the OLT, which is also known as the Ontario Land Tribunal. So at this point, I'm going to go to our deputy clerk and ask that she advise the method and dates by which notice of the public meeting was given.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Proper notice was given by way of mail distribution to property owners within 120 meters of the subject property on March 8th, 2022, as well as a yellow sign posted on the subject property.
Excellent, thank you. I'll also ask the planner, Garrett Borma, please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. An application for a zoning bylaw amendment has been made by the owner of 197 Griffin Street North, being CA Real Estate Holdings, being Christoph Arnold, and MPG Planning Solutions as planning consultant. I'm just going to share my screen here. Haven't done this in a while, so apologies. So here's the location of the subject property. The property is located right near the intersection of Griffin Street North, Station Street, and West Street in downtown Smithville. The property currently contains a three-story dwelling or a three-story main building containing a commercial use and a residential apartment and a one-story detached garage at the rear of the property. The applicants have applied for a zoning bylaw amendment on the property to request a number of modifications to the zoning bylaw, including a reduction to the minimum rear lot line setback for an accessory building from 1.2 meters to 0.64 meters, which is the existing setback of the detached garage to the rear property line. They've also requested to increase the maximum permitted height of the accessory building from 6 meters to 9.2 meters. Exceptions have also been requested for accessory dwelling regulations, as well as related to parking provisions, including the number of parking spaces. 9 spaces have been required for the number of units in the commercial space, but 7 are being requested. Also being asked for is permission to use the accessory building at the back of the property as a residential apartment without a ground floor commercial use, as our zoning bylaw requires. The property is currently zoned commercial C1, which permits commercial uses as well as secondary accessory apartments on floors above the ground floor commercial. Submitted along with the zoning amendment application was a planning justification report prepared by NPG Planning Consultants, our Planning Solutions, and building elevation drawings done by Concept. These have been provided in the staff report on tonight's agenda. If this zoning amendment is approved and the development is constructed, it would consist of 4 residential units and 1 leasable commercial space. 3 of the residential accessory apartments would be in the main building, and a commercial space would be on the in the existing main building as well on the ground floor. And 1 accessory apartment would be within the detached garage at the rear of the property. This would include the addition of a 2nd and 3rd story. In the planning report, it has mistakenly mentioned that only a 2nd story was being added, but in fact it is 2 stories, in total 3 stories. I have circulated this application to agencies and members of the public within 120 meters of the property. At the time of writing this report, staff have only received comments from 1 neighbor to the north. However, over this past weekend, staff have received 2 additional comments. Comments received from 108 West Street had concerns with the height of the accessory building. with the addition of 2 stories. Yeah, totaling 3 stories. And the concern was around regarding sunlight in the rear yard as well as privacy. And a second concern from that resident was that the proposed building may impact the historic character of the downtown core. A similar sentiment was also shared by another written submission from a resident at 59 Elma Drive, also sharing concerns around the character of the downtown. A third public comment was submitted by the owner of 197 Griffin Street, which abuts the subject property. There are concerns by this resident raised about the sharing of driveways and easements and right-of-way access, as well as concerns about the insufficient number of parking spaces and the snow melt runoff in the spring. Staff will be looking into all of these issues prior to the preparation of any recommendation report. As we just received them over the weekend, we haven't had a significant amount of time to look into those comments more fully. I just wish to share some of the materials that were submitted with this application. So the image before you shows their draft proposed site plan with the main building here, including some additions and alterations, and the 3-car garage proposed to be 3 stories in the rear of the property. And this is the elevation drawing submitted by the applicants showing the front of the building, the facade that would be facing Griffin Street North. Staff in our technical report have also completed a preliminary review of the proposal and have specifically mentioned the facade and how it aligns with the township's official plan objective to protect and enhance the character of the historic downtown Smithville, and that's something we are still looking into. Staff will also need to review the concerns raised by the members of public and the written submissions, as well as any additional submissions made this evening, as well as complete their review to see how the zoning bylaw amendment aligns to the applicable policies prior to that preparation and presentation of a recommendation report. If this application is approved, a site plan application will also be required, and the site plan agreement can be used as a tool to regulate things such as building facade. The applicant's agent, Jesse Ospitz from NPG Planning Solutions, is also on the meeting tonight, and I believe he has a presentation that he wishes to share with the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. And so I'll go to the agent then at this point if they have a presentation they'd like to make. Oh, I think we're... Okay, there we go. So with if the agent, just or whoever's speaking here, if you could just kind of give us your name first for the record, as well as your address, and then you can proceed with your presentation.
Yeah, so hi, my name is Jesse Ospitz, senior planner with NPG. Our office is at 4999 Victoria Avenue in Niagara Falls. So yeah, Garrett covered most of what was going to be in my presentation, but I'll just give an overview of what we're proposing. So as mentioned by Garrett, the application is proposing a zoning bylaw amendment. So I'll just go over the subject lands. So the subject lands have a lot area of 838.5 square meters, lot frontage of 0.37 meters. So as you can see, it's a little bit of a irregular shape and configuration because there is some sort of parquet in front of a portion of the subject lands. The lot depth is 57 meters. And as existing, it's used for a mix of commercial and residential purposes. So surrounding the subject lands are low density residential uses. These are to the north, commercial uses to the south. The West Lincoln Ambulance Station is located to the west, and there is vacant and commercial uses across the street to the east. The subject lands are also zoned commercial C1. So, the proposed development or zoning bylaw amendment can be broken down into 3 separate components. So the first component relates to, there is the main building, which there is no relief proposed specific to the main building. There's no with respect to form, but as you see later, there will be some relief with respect to use. So with the main building, there would be a mix of office and 3 accessory dwelling units. One of them would be on the ground level. There's also the accessory building at the rear. So with the accessory building at the rear, presently it's a 3-port garage, and it's a single story. So for the accessory building at the rear, the zoning bylaw amendment would propose a height of 9.2 meters, where the zoning presently permits a height of 6 meters. It would also it's also proposing to increase the coverage with respect to the accessory building. Presently, the zoning allows for a maximum coverage for the accessory building of 8%. We're proposing 10.2%. This isn't an increase from the existing, but this is to recognize the existing coverage for that accessory building. There's also relief proposed for the rear yard of the accessory building. The zoning requires a 1.2 meter rear yard setback. We're proposing 0.64 meters. There is relief proposed with respect to the site overall. So 7 parking spaces are proposed. When I did my review, I believe I found that 8 parking spaces would be required. However, I'll have to confirm that with Garrett. There's also relief proposed with respect to parking and aisle dimensions. In part, this is pertaining to that there is a reduced driveway width, but it is also related to this accessible space and the setback from the aisle for the accessibility space and the interior lot line, as well as the accessible space and the interior lot line. There's also use space provisions proposed. The first use-based provision is to allow for a dwelling without a commercial use within the accessory building. And there's also proposed to permit an accessory dwelling unit within the main building on the ground floor. In support of this application, we have provided a planning justification report with an urban design section addressing guidelines within the Smithfield Urban Design Manual, conceptual site plan, and architectural elevations. We have received some comments, and I'll just go through some of these, or the ones that we have, summarize the ones we have received. First comment is from the region. Essentially, they had no concerns with respect to the development, and they'll provide further review with a site plan application. Second comment was from CP Rail. They provided generic comments with respect to their 2013 proximity guidelines. The subject lands are outside of the noise influence area of the rail line. So it seems like it's a generic comment, and I don't see any concerns with respect to that. The more substantive comments came from budding uses. So the first one is respect to shadowing and privacy from the accessory building. And this was from 108 West Street. it is my understanding that the owner is intending to meet with that abutting property owner to see to further address their concerns, as well as character of the main building. We will be providing a response to that when we receive municipal comments. 195 Griffin Street, which is the abutting property to the south, had safety concerns with respect to the accessible parking space, parking space length concerns. So I'd like to point out that there is an existing situation in which we're working with. The subject lands contain no accessible spaces presently, so we are trying to comply with AODA and trying to see how we can make something work. So we recognize that this is an issue that we have to work with, and we're awaiting some municipal comments to see what their suggestion is on that as well. Concerns with respect to snow storage and stormwater management. I understand that the subject lands are on full municipal services, including storm infrastructure. So I anticipate that we would connect to that storm infrastructure, but I'll have to wait for engineering to provide a functional servicing plan at time of site plan submission. And they've also mentioned the shadowing concern with respect to 108 West Street. As I mentioned, we'll look into that further, and construction impacts, which we intend to reach out to the property at 195 Griffin Street to further address their concerns. There was also concerns from 195 Alma Drive pertaining to design, heritage, and compatibility. It is our position that the proposed development is consistent with the Smithville urban design guidelines. However, we would like to review planning comments before we provide a detailed response to that. In summary, in reviewing the proposed development, as well as provincial, regional, and township policies, our position is that the proposed development is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms with the growth plan, the Niagara Regional Official Plan, and the Township of West Lincoln Official Plan. The proposed development also conforms with the Smithville Urban Design Manual. We also believe it's compatible in design with the surrounding neighborhood, and contributes, and the proposed development also contributes to complete communities and a full range of housing options. We have a video that we prepared that shows kind of the massing and of the proposed development. I was hoping to be able to share.
Yep, please feel free to try if they'll work.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah. Could everyone see that?
We can.
Perfect. while all of this is going on, I also have Sean Ryan. Would he be able to speak as well to just address some of the design matters or respond to the design specific questions?
Yeah, that's no problem.
Okay.
Maybe he's welcome to even speak now as we watch this, since there's no music or audio.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Mr. Chairman, full committee.
Perfect. Hi, Sean.
Oh, so this is our proposal for the property, is to try to knock the existing third floor that is currently 3 bedrooms off. The suites that we're proposing to design here are actually multi-story suites. So actually each of the residential suites is located in the main building, and what we're proposing for the accessory building have 2 floors to them. So you're actually moving vertically through the space as opposed to horizontally. So when we're talking about the relief for the commercial or for residential on the main floor of the main building, that suite is actually 2 stories internally. So your kitchen and living room are on the main floor, and the bedroom suites are on the second, if you will. So it's the architecture is chopped up a little bit differently than a lot of apartments would be. They're all loft style suites and some of them have interconnected floor spaces between the 2. Each one of the suites is equipped with a balcony, trying to give fresh air and amenity space to the tenants, and private balconies as well for master bedrooms, etc. Our proposal is most of the residential entrances would be on this side. There is some shared common storage space in the basement. This rendering was prepared a little bit earlier on. Where you're seeing those benches now, unfortunately, is where we're also intending to put the accessible parking spot that's had to change. This was prepared quite a few months back, actually. But the building mass itself is still intended to be the same.
Thank you. All right, Jesse, was there anything further you wanted to add, or?
No, that is essentially summarizes what we're proposing.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm going to move forward to members of the public. Are there any oral written submissions from anyone present on this Zoom meeting regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? I would like to stress that this may be the only public meeting held with respect to this application. Therefore, if any members of the public that are in attendance at this Zoom meeting would like to make a comment or provide a written comment, they should do so by using one of the 2 options. If you have a computer or smartphone, you're just going to raise your hand, which can be found in the Zoom options listed on your display screen. Or if you're using a landline or telephone, you just hit *9, and that will notify us that you've raised your hand. Once you've been acknowledged to speak, we do ask that you unmute your microphone. It is important that you provide your comments now, if you have not done so already in writing or verbally, as the OLT, also known as Ontario Land Tribunal, may not consider comments made during any other council and or committee meeting. Also, anyone wishing to speak are required to unmute the microphone to talk, but then once they're finished, we do ask that you remute your microphone, or you remute your microphone, or just mute. And prior to speaking, we do ask that you give your first name, your last name, and your address. So at this point, I'm going to go to members of the gallery. So Kevin, if we can bring that up there. Thank you. I see a couple hands already up. So I got Kenneth. So we'll go with Kenneth first, and then we'll follow up with everyone else afterwards. So Kenneth, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Perfect. So I just need you to state your name and your address for the record, and then you can proceed.
Kenneth Crandonk, 108 West Street.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
So I just wanted to reemphasize the comments that I submitted in my written statement. I haven't heard from the property owner as of yet, so I look forward to that. But first of all, my concern is with this 3-story garage that they're adding the 1 story that they're adding 2 stories to. It will directly look over my backyard. You can see in the video that there was a window that would look directly into my backyard. And I'm not sure what time of day the animation was from, but I would say that during the winter, the sun is much lower and generally directly behind, especially in the afternoon. So it would directly shade my backyard as well as likely into my house. And that's one of my major concerns. My other concern is with just how it fits in with the rest of Smithville. I think the Smithville Urban Center has some buildings that are clearly more heritage buildings, including the one they wish to change that were built around 100 years ago. So changing those to this building, though it may fit in some place in Smithville, I don't think would fit in the urban core, because you only have a certain number of these heritage buildings, and to change that would be disappointing. You'd also see the accessory building from West Street as well, and that wouldn't fit in with the other houses in the neighborhood. The developer says they think it will. I would argue it looks pretty much exactly opposite. It's a big box rather than the houses that have been built that are around 100 years old. So those are my concerns, and I would just like to reemphasize that, and I'd be very disappointed if it was built as is. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask you to lower your virtual hand there and mute your microphone. Perfect. And then if we can bring that, thank you, Kevin, if you can bring that back up. So Matt, if we can permit Matt to speak, his hand's up. So Matt, again, you just got to state your first name, last name, and your address for the record.
Hi, I am Matt Wickman. My address is 195 Griffin Street North. I submitted this with Garrett, and I said that I would read my comments this evening.
Perfect. Feel free to proceed.
Okay. I'm gonna make 5 comments, and then my wife is going to fill in on the sort of business aspect and the effect. So I'll read them off. The first one is the application uses the term shared driveway. I'd like to clarify that our driveway is not shared. We do not have a right-of-way or easement. They do not have a right-of-way or easement onto their backyard area. We do. Their backyard or parking area, but that does not indicate a shared driveway. There's no legal right access to use of any of our property. The accessible parking spot that's listed between that parking spot and our property line is 1.66 meters. The accessible parking stall in the driveway is a concern, as it encourages pedestrian traffic into our driveway area, which is a safety concern, and it also forces traffic onto our driveway to get around it, which is not acceptable and should not be relied upon as access to their backyard, and parking, as it is not a shared driveway. If we were to put a fence up on our side of the property line, it would be effectively and legally block all access to their back parking. Our property cannot be utilized as regular access for their required parking. The number 3, the insufficient number of parking spaces.
Matt, you're cutting out a bit for a second. You sound muffled. So we just didn't hear the number 3.
Okay, number 3. The insufficient number of parking spaces is
Oh, you disappeared on us again. We'll give you a second here.
Like it? Hello?
Oh, can you hear us? We can hear you now.
Okay, very good. The insufficient number of parking spaces is a major concern, as there is not enough parking spaces in our area as is. We already have issues with people from the surrounding businesses, specifically RBC, that has no parking in our parking lot and regularly blocking our driveway. We also take exception to the shortening to the parking spaces, as in many municipalities, they are looking at increasing the size of parking spaces due to the increasing size of vehicles. It is irresponsible to allow less space for required parking, especially when it is in short supply. Number 4 is the snow storage and water runoff plan is a particular concern to us. The water from the snow melt already traverses our driveway and parking area, requiring extra salt and care to prevent ice from forming on our property. This past winter, with no snow removal performed on their property, highlighted this effect. There is no room in the plan for snow storage or water management, and this must be addressed. Number 5, the height of the proposed accessory building, in addition, would effectively block sunlight from the northern neighbor's yard entirely and eliminate the privacy they have come to expect. Allowing additional 2 stories onto an old cement block garage does not seem wise or feasible. The changes of it needed to entirely be rebuilt to support the extra height is very likely, in which case it should be held to the setbacks and regulations of new structures. For number 6, I'll leave this to my wife as she manages the Vitality business that is next door.
Andrea Wickman, and again, 195 Griffin Street North.
Excellent, thank you.
I'm concerned about how the scale of this project will be completed without significantly impacting my business. Having just come through several years of difficulty due to COVID, disruption to our business activities and our parking areas is a serious concern. Our recovery depends on being able to provide our services without more disruption. The regular blocking of our driveway and parking areas, the months of excessive noise, the danger for our patients traversing a construction zone to get from the parking lot to our clinic are just some of the negative impacts we will endure, and no plan has been put forward to reduce those impacts. I also want to reiterate that putting an accessible parking spot in the middle of the driveway that then forces people to go around that parking spot onto our property and onto our driveway is not feasible. Our patients and our people are already traversing our driveway. We can't have them being put in danger by people driving around a parking spot in the middle of a driveway.
Excellent, thank you. Was there anything further?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Thank you. So we'll go back to the gallery. Your comments have been recorded, so we'll go back to the gallery just to see if there's any other members here. So again, this may be the only time you can speak to this application, as OLT may not permit anything further. So if you have questions or comments now, you must do so, or you must provide them in writing before the bylaw is passed. Not seeing or hearing any, I'm going to go to members of committee. Do any members of committee have any oral written submissions on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? Please note that members of committee must make their comments now, as the OLT may not consider comments made at any other council or committee meeting. Any member of council wishing to speak are required to unmute the microphone to talk and then remute your microphone. I have Councillor Gannon and Councillor Trombetta. I'll go with Councillor Gannon first.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Trombetta, be prepared to wait for a little bit. We received this package on Friday night, and that was the first that we really had a good look at this report. And I spent the weekend making notes. And interestingly, you will see that some of the same themes come through, the same as you've already heard. However, I do have a few comments and some question or two about this application. I start by saying I do realize that the job of the planner for any applicant is to search out all policy points from all levels of documentation to find the areas that most conform with and therefore support the application. Providing a mix of housing types and densities and the term affordability are key buzzwords for justifying any application. Justification reports, by their very nature, tend to downplay areas that do not quite conform. Some of those areas in a smaller municipality such as ours turn out to be the very things that local residents value greatly. I'm wondering if any of the people involved in the justification report even visited Smithville to have a look at the site in question, or whether the work was done strictly from mapping online. One of the things being dismissed as unimportant is the actual site of this application. As part of section 4.6.3, number 8 of the report, the justification report, the comment indicates that this current old brick building, built circa 1920, is not to be considered a landmark, and it is felt that it's not a prominent location, nor does it have any historical value, as indicated in the report. Clearly, you have not entered Smithville from almost any direction into the Griffin Street area. A great many lovely older homes in Smithville are passed coming in from every direction toward this small downtown core. I believe that those living in, or even those visiting Smithville, feel very differently about the curbside appeal of this property in question, which is in fact pretty close to being a corner lot and is most definitely prominent on our main street, that being Griffin Street. My second point is that in section 4.6.4, under guidelines for private development in downtown Smithville, from the document Smithville Urban Design Manual of 2016, bullet number 6 states that build form, architectural details, and materials, and I've highlighted, should maintain and enhance the Main Street character of downtown Smithville. And number 7 states clearly, use high-quality exterior cladding, including brick, stone, and precast concrete. I fail to see how the suggestion of using a combination of wood siding, pre-finished metal cladding, corrugated metal cladding, stucco, and stone in any way meet the standard, which begins with the word brick. Our official plan states clearly that it is also the intent of this plan to ensure that new development will be appropriately designed to be compatible with the character and image of the area, and, I quote, will not create adverse impacts on adjacent areas within the downtown. Council a great many years ago fell victim to the push at that time to tear down the old and to modernize. That resulted in the loss of many older character buildings being replaced by the cement block and metal roofing of the Brenzel building, which now houses Service Ontario, the CIBC, and some apartments above this commercial usage. Many residents still complain to this day about the ruination of our downtown whenever old photos of what used to be appear on various social media platforms. Personally, I'm not ready to see this council add to that mistake, and I would certainly ask that the applicant and his partners work with our staff to address both the appearance and the materials used in this proposed building. I also take issue with the justification report that seems to imply that increasing the height of both the garage and the main building was, and I quote, not anticipated to have a significant visual impact on the relationship between the subject lands and adjacent residential uses. Based on the irregular shape of the lot, it is true that this would not have an impact on rear property line neighbors. However, this is an old building in an old neighborhood where the region over the years has reduced both the width of the road and changed the shape of the corner. The residents who would be greatly affected are actually side yard homes, one of whom in particular would find his home and yard dwarfed by this proposal if it were to go through as suggested. His concerns definitely need to be addressed. Number 4, another area that raises concern for me is the issue of parking. Again, your report states that fewer parking spaces would be acceptable, and again I quote, that a reduced reliance on automobiles may be expected. I see that your office is located on Victoria Avenue in Niagara Falls. That you might be able to do without a vehicle there may well be true. However, West Lincoln, including the village of Smithville, is most definitely a vehicle-dependent municipality. 1 vehicle or more per family unit is the bare minimum for most to be able to buy groceries, attend medical appointments, or even take part in family or social outings. We do not have access to regular public transit, including taxi service. Although some of our residents appreciate that they are able to access the on-demand regional service to travel outside of our municipality, that does not now allow them to travel anywhere within the 388 square kilometers of our township. Personal vehicles are a must, and so are adequate parking spaces. Later in our agenda tonight, in the background section of the report under PD 43, Council is reminded that as part of the comprehensive review of the issue in question, that being involving parking, and based on the numerous issues that we've had regarding the appropriate number of parking spaces required, that now new single detached buildings, townhouses, and apartment buildings are required to have a greater number of parking spaces. The requirement is now 1.75 spaces per residential unit. That means this applicant definitely requires 7 spaces for the residential parking alone. That means that this portion also requires parking for at least 1 employee and anyone who might attend the commercial aspect of this application. Street parking in our downtown was already reduced in the recent work done by the region, and there are 2-hour limits on some of the spaces located close to this application site. Counting on-street parking to supplement parking, as suggested in the report, is not a feasible answer. And finally, I have a comment and question or two regarding the side parking space. I'm glad to hear that the Witchers already raised this issue. I'm asking, would the applicant or agent please explain how a reduction in the size of a handicap parking space, which is necessary under the Accessibility for Ontario Act of 2005, A, be able to be reduced in size when normally those spaces are larger to accommodate getting crutches, wheelchairs, etc. from the back or side door of a vehicle, or B, be abutted to the side of a building, which limits the ability to fully open enough space for a passenger who might in fact be the person with the disability to disembark from what are often larger vehicles in the first place. And I didn't mention the safety issue because I hadn't spoken to anybody next door at Vitality, but I'm certainly glad that that issue was also raised. My next question about that is this designated handicap space meant to provide access for customers of the commercial venture or for residential purposes? The report states that it would allow access in close proximity to the primary building entrance, but how would that accommodate anyone with a disability being able to actually access the building? The main floor area is currently above grade and requires stairs and or ramping to allow access. So I did see when the video was shown that it looks like coming into the main portion that's supposed to be commercial, looks like it's at ground level, but I know very well that it is not at ground level in the current building. So if the entire current building is coming down, that's an entirely different subject. So I'm wondering if the applicant or the planner would please explain the main entrance as is indicated in the report renderings. It looks to me as though there may be stairs, and how would the person with a disability be able to access this main entrance? And finally, I'm just going to say it's quite obvious to me that there's a great deal more work that needs to be done between the applicant and his planner and our township planning staff before this comes back to us at some time in the future. But if Mr., I'm sorry, I had Ms. Tanner because I thought she was coming, but if Mr. Auspitz is able to answer anything about that opening to where the commercial should be, what the main door of this building, where it would be located, I would appreciate that information. Thank you.
I'll have Sean comment on the design, but I do want to comment on the accessible parking space matter, if that's all right with you through the chair.
Yep, go for it.
So as existing, the subject lands don't have any accessible parking spaces. There isn't really an ideal spot to place that accessible space. What we have been trying to do was try to find a way to accommodate an accessible space, and we recognize that this isn't an ideal situation. So the AODA, it requires the accessible space for the commercial use. Where we place, with respect to reductions in the length of the space, I just want to turn back to the site plan, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so with oh, okay. Garrett, are you?
Garrett, would you be able to bring the site plan up so we can have a visual for everyone?
Yes, 1 second here.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the subject, like, it is a very awkward configuration as existing. So keep in mind, we don't have a significant amount of frontage that is related to a parkland or some sort of parkette that's in front of the building. The reduction in the length of the accessible space, it is a little bit of an awkward configuration because it isn't really a clear, the way it's anticipated, the zoning anticipates it, would be that it would be entirely blocked off at the front and the back. So there is a little bit of access, the setback toward the way the building is set back towards the middle of the accessible space allows for some maneuverability into that space. So it's more so to deal with a little bit more of an awkward configuration.
Okay, and for what it's worth, hold on 1 second. So again, just to make sure, Jesse, like, staff's going to be reviewing this and going more intensively here. So appreciate you kind of just addressing those, but you don't necessarily have to go beyond like the major specifics of that. But I'll let Councillor Ganan. I think she had a follow-up question.
So further to that, please, I see where you have the space on this drawing, since we have a drawing in front of us. And so if I look on my screen and I'm looking to the right of that, it looks like that's where the main doors are meant to be. But those doors, technically, if you keep the space the way it is, are going to have some stairs involved in some way, where the stairs are actually closer to the opposite end on the left side of the screen. And so in that regard, depending on how you get into this building, either the accessible space is not appropriate for people who are going to live in the building, or it's definitely not in a good position for people who are going to be entering the building because it is going to require some kind of stairs. So I think there are some major flaws there that need to be addressed, and you really need to take a look at the building and the way it is now. The reason there was no, even though it was zoned commercial before, the reason that there was no designated space is because the building was being used for natural abilities. And so those young people and some not so young who came to work and to take part in the programs there actually were dropped off at the back where there was sufficient parking, and that's why the ramping and the stairs, you know, were there. That's why it is the way it is. And so that certainly needs to be addressed if you're going to be using a commercial space there. So I won't keep it longer. I think I've made my points, but I do think that there is major, major work that needs to be done. I just feel like this report was done from afar without really examining the property very carefully. Thank you.
Yes. So through the chair, going back to the site plan, we are going, like, keep in mind, right now we're applying for relief to the zoning bylaw. A lot of these matters there is a subsequent process, a site planning process, where a lot of these matters will have to be further addressed and articulated. And I think, Sean, you wanted to comment as well on the accessible space.
So my only comment on the accessible space was that the intention is that there would be a accessible lift located in the front lobby of the commercial unit to allow you to lift to the existing main floor level, approximately, I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 32 inches, etc. But that was the intention, was to keep the lift inside the building, not outside, so that you're, and then be done with the ramp. The current ramp actually takes up as much space as what we're proposing with our accessible spot. If that helped at all, I'm sorry if it muddied it further.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to other members of the committee here. So I got Councillor Trombetta on my list next. So, and then I got the Mayor Bylsma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have as extensive as Councillor Ganam, but she mentioned a lot of points that I wanted to make in her preparation that she had there. I'm kind of disappointed on the, and actually NPG here, on their kind of design for this building. You know, I'm a little of that new school, old school councillor that I've been here in 2 terms. And I like to keep the sort of landscape that we have in our downtown core. You know, we have special pieces that I still like to keep, and I understand this is a commercial building, and I know this property just sold, and we have new people coming in to redevelop or redesign, and I don't think they really took the consideration of the landscape of our downtown core into consideration at all for their design or their conceptual design for this project. You know, that's one thing which I think they're, and I'm going to agree with Councillor Ganam that I think they're going to have to maybe go back and kind of redesign. I still like to see the existing building somewhat be incorporated in the design to maintain that look that we have for our downtown core. And if you go to any downtown core, you know, we can, our neighboring properties, you know, the core that these properties like Grimsby and Lincoln are still, these downtown core buildings are still there and still kind of maintained, that they've been there for 100 years. And I still want to keep that in our downtown core of Smithville. The other issues I have are, which are touched upon, are the, you know, we have, what is it, 6 zoning modifications that's being requested on this council to do for this project, which, you know, I find really excessive. So there is some work that needs to be taken back to this consultant, because again, the big thing is parking, which again, I'm gonna touch on something that bugged me a bit, was back when the region did Griffin Street. You know, we removed a lot of parking on Griffin Street, and this council wasn't really involved too much in the removal of the parking spaces. So what's happening now is that people are going to be parking at the Dollarama. There, you know, people have 2 cars, and they're going to be filling all these other parking lots and other areas, trying to fill parking spaces that obviously this proposal is actually reducing the amount of parking, you know, trying to get us to make a zoning modification to reduce the amount of parking spaces. I'm not happy with the rear lot setback. That's another thing that's actually getting reduced as well. So I guess there's a bunch of things that need to go back and get maybe replanned for me to really to be considerate, because again, this development is really way different than what I see the vision of our downtown core to be. So hopefully you can work with our planning staff, with this consultant can come back with maybe something else, but at this point, in seeing the way it's designed, it just doesn't fit the needs that I'd like to see in our downtown core. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'll go to Mayor Bylsma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so this question is actually to our director, probably to Garrett, or if anybody can answer that. So if I look at the building that's there, you know, kind of a stately 100-year-old home, I look at the concept drawing of what's going there. In order to get from A to B on that opening building, I can imagine that a significant part of the original structure has to be dismantled in order to get that concept. Because, you know, apart from the footprint, there's really hardly anything recognizable from the foundation wall up. You know, in my imagination, you know, in terms of facades and stuff like that, I saw something similar to that at the edge of town, where the building was reduced basically to about 12 posts and beams, and then reconstructed, you know, with all new roof lines and such. So my question to the director is simply this: I can appreciate that somebody developing an existing piece of property wants to avoid maybe some of the site plan route and some of the permits and the fees that are necessary by retaining an original footprint. But at what point, at what point does does this become a redevelopment, and what point does it just become an extensive renovation? Where's the line between those two? Is that clearly defined? Or, like, to me, this is more than an extensive renovation. To me, this is a complete, new development in a manner of speak. That they're basically. I'm curious to know, like, what the value of the savings of retaining the foundation walls are in terms of, from the planning perspective, in terms of the process it has to go through. So I hope I'm kind of clear, but what are they trying to avoid by retaining something, you know, and maybe it's a little bit more of a, you know, philosophical question if and when we see other developments like this in the downtown core.
Go ahead, Mr. Director. Yep.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. The question's an interesting one, and unfortunately the answer isn't nearly as easy to articulate as the question was. The distinction between whether it's new development or redevelopment, in some respects, I'm not even sure it completely matters. I think ultimately the key goal is to do a development that blends in with the character of the core. And we haven't provided an opinion in this report. It's simply a tech report, but I think we can do better. I don't see what we have as necessarily a wonderful new modern building that blends in, and I certainly don't see the historic character of what is there now. So, you know, I think the discussion that I'd like to have with the planner and the other agents is to see if they can't redesign. What are they saving, or what are they avoiding by doing it this way? I'm not certain. I think from a policy perspective, redevelopment in the downtown core, either way, still should end up with a similar result, something that blends in with the character of the community. And I'm not sure what I'm seeing is completely there yet.
And just for the record, I want it to be noted that in my memory, and I've been doing a little bit of streetscape on maps, I think there are, in fact, 6 buildings, very of similar structure, about 2.5 stories each, from the old hardware store and the little the side street. Then there's I think there's a chiropractor in there, and then and it used to be somewhat of a bookstore. Then there's the real estate agency, although there's been various and sundry things in there. Then the Royal Bank, which is more of a modern building, but quite muted. It's a little set back a little bit. It's not prominent. It's not on the same frontage line, but it's 1 story. And then these 3 buildings going to the corner, one kind of done up in that, red brick on the corner. This one with the kind of a yellow brick. And then the, what used to be kind of a lighter brick, used to be the flower shop. 6 significant buildings form kind of a nice foundation. And then we're going to, I think that if we're going to retain something of the building, the very important part for me is the front half of the building, and I would be willing to entertain an extensive renovation to the back half of the building. Not so warm to 3-story in the back on top of a garage, and again, subject to engineering, of course. 3 stories on top of probably a single-story garage lends me to believe that all the retaining is a footprint, and foundations would have to be redone again. I do have an engineering background, and I'm not necessarily suggesting exactly what that all is, but I can't for the life of me understand how you can just put 2 stories on top of a garage that probably has to undergo significant changes to the foundations and the structures of that as well. And it begs the question of what's trying to get squeezed in here, and what's trying to be avoided. And I'm sure that in the end product will be safe, and our building inspectors will do what's necessary, and there'll be engineering drawings that have to be done. But just, understanding that there are 6 structures, very similar, or this is one of 6 structures, all of the same architectural style. Very important to me. I think that lends to what can be and what ought to be appropriate for this. I would even venture this, that if it was the building next to the Royal Bank, on either side of the Royal Bank, something like this may be even more appropriate. But in the middle of these 3 stately homes, with no intentions of seeing no other site plan proposals for the buildings on either side, can't imagine that there would be. To me is too big a pill to swallow. You're looking at somebody who loves and adores downtown streetscapes for their historical significance. I can drive through these little villages through southern Ontario, along the Grand and some of the old highways all day long. Really enjoy the brick and the architecture. We have 6 significant buildings as part of our downtown core. They show up on the pictures. 100 years ago, they show up on those pictures. So anyways, those are some of my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That I'd like to entertain at this time.
Okay, appreciate that. So I'm going to go to Councillor Yonker, and then I'll make my comments, and we'll get through this.
Yeah, I don't think I need to add too much. I think all the concerns I had too when I read this report have been said. There's a lot of asks in this, like what was mentioned, and when you look at this building, you just go, it does not match. To me, it's almost it's too different for me. So I'm hoping that we can see something different come forward, and we'll definitely have to. There'll be a lot of work with the planning here on this one, but it's just too much. It's too different, and same as Mr. Mayor said, adding on top of those concrete blocks. Obviously, I'm not an engineer either, but you just look at it going, that's a pretty big ask. So I think this is a concept, and they're seeing what they can get through, but this here, there's too much to change for this to go forward for me, for sure. So.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Yonker. And I guess I'll just make my, Councillor Yonker, if you could just lower your virtual hand there, please, that'd be great. And then I guess just as far as my remarks go, there's not too much I can say that hasn't already been said. Councillor Gannan, I think, just about took all the words out of my mouth. I guess if we're just to highlight a concern as well, I know when I saw this original plan, my biggest concern was the characteristic of the front. And I feel like it really, as modernized as it is, it really takes away from the West Lincoln charm that we have in our downtown core. I don't think any of us expect it to be exactly the same. We know some change is inevitable, but I think this course of change just doesn't fit, like I said, the West Lincoln charm that we have down there. So hopefully that could be the big takeaway here. I guess my other request is that, whatever comes forth down the road, I think it's really important that we have communication open with all those adjacent businesses. I think it's important, especially those who are trying to manage, appointments. And so if we can communicate how that works, and I'm speaking more specifically to, the owner of the property and how they're going to move forward with this at whatever point it actually gets to. And I don't anticipate this coming back anytime soon. But at the same time, I think that's important to have some positive dialogue between them, because there's some serious concerns they have, which I agree with. And trying to manage it, you got to be a good neighbor. And I think if you can, the more you communicate and the more you can work with each other, the better it's going to be for the whole community. But I certainly want to see, as well as everyone else has mentioned here, a change in the proposed the design of the overall layout of it. And again, I know the mayor had mentioned concerns for the engineering aspect of it. I trust that our staff are going to be more than capable of determining what needs to be required for that. So I have no concern with that at this time. I feel that they're more than capable to determine whether or not it's going to be appropriate, and we'll let them bring that report back to us then. And in the meantime, I'm going to move forward here, as long as no other members of the committee have any questions. Not seeing any. So that I'm going to just advise that a technical, my goodness, sorry, my lips are drying out. Please be advised that a technical report is being considered by committee this evening, and that a recommendation report will be forthcoming to a future committee and or council meeting. Please also be advised that once committee and council have made a decision with respect to a zoning bylaw amendment, and if approved by council, a notice of its passing will be circulated with an appeal period. If you wish to be notified of that decision, please ensure that you email the township clerk, Joanne Shime, at jshime@westlincoln.ca. Anyone else who is interested in observing future council and committee discussions about a particular bylaw should not solely rely on mailed notices and thus miss the opportunity to attend an applicable meeting here. It is suggested that you watch the township website for posting of agendas to review the items that will be discussed at a council and or committee meeting. Agendas for the meetings are posted on the township website after 4 p.m. on the Friday prior to the meeting. Additionally, meeting schedules are noted on the township website for the public to view, and if you wish to receive those notices by email, it is suggested again that you contact the township clerk to advise of that request, including your email along with your mailing address and phone number. So the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is concluded at the hour of 9:50 p.m. So all those related to that, thank you very much for your patience. And we're going to get on to our last public meeting here. So I'll give everyone a quick second here. People are going to bounce around here. Okay. So make sure my mic's still on, perfect. This public meeting is to consider zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Neil Carter for the property located at 2990 South Grimsby Road 18, file number 1601-00222. The Planning Act requires in section 3412 that before passing a zoning bylaw amendment, council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. The purpose of this public meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public regarding the zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Neil Carter for the property located at 2990 South Grimsby Road 18. We stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, and any comments received will be taken into account by council in their consideration. I should also mention that the Planning Act requires through section 3413 that council advise the public that if a person or public body does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or a written submission to the Township of West Lincoln before the bylaw is passed, that person or public body is not entitled to appeal that decision of council for the Township of West Lincoln to the OLT, also known as Ontario Land Tribunal. So at this point, I would like to ask the Deputy Clerk to please advise the method and dates by which notice of the public meeting was given.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Proper notice was circulated to all relevant agencies on March 22nd, 2022, as well as a yellow sign posted on the subject property and posted on the township's website on March 23rd, 2022.
Excellent, thank you. I will ask Planner Madison Etzel, please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This application for rezoning is required to rezone the property from residential low density to residential low density with a site-specific exception to allow for the applicants to operate a home industry in an existing accessory building. The proposed home industry use would include a data processing center. Home industries are currently not permitted in residential low-density zones except by amendment. The proposed data processing center has been proposed to operate out of the existing 157 square meter accessory building. The home industry is only expected to take up to approximately 78 square meters of the existing garage, which is about 45 to 50% of the total garage area. Home industries are permitted to operate out of existing accessory buildings as a total gross floor area of no more than 100 square meters. The data processing center will consist of specialized computer equipment connected to the internet that would be running 24/7 and will be using a substantial amount of electricity. The high-tech equipment would be cooled with a dielectric fluid immersion system that uses a dry cooler outside of the building. The cooler is proposed to be located to the rear of the accessory building and is also proposed to be less than 74 decibels, which can be compared to a air conditioning unit. The applicant has informed planning staff that there will only be the property owner and one other employee on site, as this is a business-to-business operation, and as a result, there will be no increase in traffic or parking on South Grimsby Road 18. The Niagara region provided comments stating that if there is a future development proposed, an environmental impact study may be required. Staff will further discuss with the fire department to see if the data processing facility increases the fire risk to the property prior to a recommendation report. And I believe the applicant is here tonight and will be able to answer any further questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Madison. I'll ask at this time if the applicant or their authorized agent is present and if they would like to speak to this application. See Neil Carter. So Kevin, if we can permit Neil. Hi, Neil. If you could just, for the record, state your name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Neil Carter, and the address is 2990 South Grimsby Road 18, in Smithville.
Excellent, and you're welcome to, if you have any comments or anything you want to state, now's the time.
Okay, no, actually, Madison's done a great job of just sort of outlining what we're looking to do, and I'm just here to answer any questions if there is any.
Excellent, thank you. So we'll just have you lower your virtual hand, and for the time being, just mute your microphone, and then we'll come back to you. So at this point, I'm going to ask members of the public if there are any oral written submissions from anyone present at the meeting on this proposed zoning bylaw amendment. I would like to stress that this may be the only public meeting held with this or held with respect to this application. Therefore, if any members of the public that are in attendance at this Zoom meeting would like to make their comments or provide a written comments, they should do so by using one of the following two options. If you're using a computer or smartphone, you're going to select the raise your hand feature, which can be found in the Zoom options on your screen. And if you called in by landline or telephone, you just hit *9 and this will notify us that you've raised your hand. Once you've been acknowledged to speak, we ask that you unmute your microphone, and then as it's important for you to provide your comments now, and then once you're done, we'll ask you to remute your microphone again. And sorry, I kind of jumped 2 lines here, so I do have to read this just for a declaration, that it's important that you make your comments now, and if you do, and if you've not done so already in writing or verbally, as the OLL2 may not consider the comments made during any other council and committee meeting. So at this point, I'll go to members of the public. So if we can just see if there's anybody in the public there that would like to ask questions or make a comment, and not seeing or hearing anything, I'll just confirm with our deputy clerk. Have we received any further comments by email just prior to the meeting?
No, Mr. Chair, we have not.
Excellent, thank you. So I'll go to members of committee. Do any members of committee have any oral written submissions on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? Please note that members of committee must make their comments now, as the OL2 may not consider comments made at any other council and committee meeting. And any member wishing to speak, know how to unmute their microphone and then remute it again once you're done. So at this point, any members of committee have any comments? Not seeing or hearing any. All right, we'll move forward to advise the technical report is being considered by the committee this evening, and that a recommendation report will be forthcoming to a future committee and or council meeting. We also advise that once a committee and or council has made a decision with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment, and if approved by council, a notice of its passing will be circulated within the appeal period. If you wish to be notified of council's decision, please ensure that you email our township clerk at joanne.shime@westlincoln.ca. And I know I've said this a few times already, but I got to finish it here. Anyone who's interested in observing council and committee discussions about a particular bylaw should not solely rely on mailed notices and thus miss the opportunity to attend applicable meetings. It is suggested that you watch the township website for posting of agendas to review the items that will be discussed at council and committee meetings. The agendas are posted on the township's website after 4 p.m. on the Friday following the meeting. Additionally, meetings schedules are also noted on the township website for the public to view. If you wish to receive notices by email, it's suggested that you contact the township clerk and advise of this request, and you include your email along with your mailing address and phone number. So this public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is now concluded at the hour of 8:58 p.m. So we will go right back to the normal agenda there. So thank you, everyone. That was a little longer than I think we were expecting that would go, but it was good information, good feedback from the community and committee and applicants as well. Make sure I have the right paper in front of me here. So at this point, I'm going to go to members of the committee to see if there are any changes of orders of items on the agenda. Not seeing or hearing any. I'm going to move forward. So we have an appointment tonight by Leanne Timber-Sharp, resident Carter Drive, crossing on the 20 condo development registration. And there is a recommendation I'll read afterwards. I think in the time being we'll let her make her presentation. So Leanne, if you're still with us, I hope we haven't lost you.
No, I'm here. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for your patience. I know this probably went a little longer than you're expecting, but please feel free to make your presentation. If you want to put your video on, If you don't want to, if you just want to use a presentation, go for it. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm just actually, bear with me. I'm going to share my screen. All right. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to present. I'm representing the 24 homeowners of crossings on the 20 South Carter Drive in Smithville, and wanted to bring some of our issues to the forefront of this meeting tonight. The first thing, just an outline talking about our owner situation and interim occupancy, which we are all facing right now. Termination clause that we are all obligated to at this point as per our agreement of purchase and sale. A letter from the developer that we received on April 4th, and our expectations for the future. The objective tonight of my presentation is to create awareness regarding our costs, risks, and frustrations and this ongoing delay, with hopefully the goal being immediate home ownership for us. At this point, it's been almost 2 years since the first owner moved in. We feel that we are being held hostage in a situation that doesn't involve us. And for most of us, we are really having struggle sleeping, we are stressed, we are frustrated, and we're continuing to pay out money and not owning our own homes. In terms of a timeline, just so everyone can understand what we are dealing with, we basically, this has been ongoing for quite a while, but one of the most important things that I think everyone needs to understand is that the first owner here took interim occupancy status in August of 2020. That interim occupancy means that we are paying a monthly rent to the builder, which includes interest on amount owing, condo fees, and property taxes. The last owner moved in 2021, August, and between us, we're all paying roughly approximately $1,600 to $1,800 a month, and that does not apply to our purchase cost. It comes directly out of our savings. In October 23rd of 2021, this was kind of the first time that I think most of us became aware that there was an issue going on with, a potential issue going on with registration of the condo in relation to the lands to the north of our development and the south of the creek. And it was at this time that we received an email from the listing agent who was representing the builder that basically indicated that, things were getting closer, they were getting closer to registration, but that the builder's consultants were dealing with the township of West Lincoln to convey the additional lands to the north of the development to be parkland. So at that point, we all felt that things would wrap up quickly. And as they indicated in this email, registration would take place as soon as possible after the above items were completed. We are now over 6 months from that email, and we still remain stuck in interim occupancy because this issue has not been resolved, unless you were able to resolve it tonight in private, which hopefully we get some positive feedback on that. But ultimately, it's important that all of you understand that from the last resident that moved into the first resident, there's been fees paid upwards of $25,000 without us owning our homes. Our contract time is also running out, which I'll be speaking to next. Our bank accounts are running low. Mortgage rates have rapidly increased. And I know for my husband and I, the rate we had locked in when we initially signed until now has doubled. And we basically feel, again, that we're being held hostage in the middle of an issue that does not pertain to us whatsoever. Oh, sorry about that. So one of the issues that you may not be aware of is that in our agreement of purchase and sale that we signed, we are subject to a 24-month termination clause. And that clause basically states that if notwithstanding all reasonable steps taken by the vendor, the condominium is not registered within 24 months after the occupancy date, unless otherwise agreed to, the agreement shall be terminated. What that ultimately means is that starting in August of 2022, which is 24 months from when the first owner was given interim occupancy, we essentially could be evicted if the condominium isn't registered. So it puts us all at extremely high risk of losing our homes and ultimately being homeless. Most of us sold our homes to move here. Most of us are living on savings, some retirement savings. A lot of people have fixed incomes. So it's a big issue. The other issue is that we have lost purchase power in the real estate market. As you know, our homes here have gained substantial value, but we don't own them. And if we were to lose our home here, we certainly wouldn't be able to buy back into the market pretty much in anywhere of Ontario for the same price we paid for these homes. On April the 4th, we received a letter from DeHaan Homes that basically gave us some insight, well, basically proposed that something was being presented to you in terms of a trail. He's indicated in this letter that there's been delays. He does kind of allude to the fact that it's been delays as a result of council taking weeks to realize the cost of a bridge would be astronomical, and decided at your last meeting that would not be feasible. So he's indicated the delays there, and that we or he is back at square one. So he's also stated in this letter to us that planning staff have now requested us to build a pedestrian trail from Ellis Street, traveling east through the north part of Rock Street Park to the additional lands and end at the creek. He said that he's provided the township with a cost and a proposal, which you were discussing tonight and planning to bring to council for approval. So he's giving us this sense of hope that this is all coming to fruition tonight, and we're hoping the same. Ultimately, you know, we're just wondering, what does our future hold? We feel that we definitely deserve to have answers. We deserve resolution here. Now that there is this proposal from DeHaan Homes, can this issue get resolved tonight? That's our biggest question to you. We deserve ultimately to finally own our homes, to stop paying unnecessary fees, and to stop being the victims of a situation we were never made aware of. It was never disclosed to us that this issue with the land could delay condominium registration and put us in this position. And ultimately, we shouldn't be caught in the middle of this. As Walt Disney said, the way to getting started is to quit talking and begin doing. And in summary, tonight I've tried to present quickly to you that, you know, and represented as the homeowners of the crossings on the 20 Carter Drive, that we are passionate about our case. We have costs, we have risks and frustrations here. Ultimately, we really don't care who is at fault. We are tired of the finger pointing back and forth, but we ultimately know that we are not the ones at fault, and that really it's now in your hands. So that is where we are at, and I'm just hoping tonight that if it's possible, you can share with us, as I know most of the residents are watching, what's been going on.
Okay, thank you, Leanne, and thank you for the presentation. I think for what I could start with is going to go to our director of planning and then have him start. I think we'll go to our CAO. But I do want to mention one thing with seeing that letter and reviewing it, and to even clarify any misunderstandings. As of this moment, as of tonight, that was not proposed to council, and so I feel really concerned that there's a professional in our community that's going out of their way and providing what I would determine a misrepresentation, and an exaggeration of the facts, and I think that's really unfortunate. You guys have been caught in the middle of that. But in the meantime, I'm going to go to our director of planning and have him speak to what he can. As you know, it's kind of in the legal's hands, but there is some issues that we can address, and hopefully we can provide you a little bit of clarity with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll speak a little bit to the process. I think that might assist the ownership group a little bit anyway. There's some stuff I can't speak to, obviously, but I think to sort of go back to square one, which was referred to in the presentation. Square one is in the year 2009 when draft plan approval was granted. Now, at that point, it was only for half of the condominium development, not the double loaded road, just the units on the west side of the road. And it was a condo development that went right to the creek. So to suggest that square one is back to a trail is not accurate. To indicate to the ownership group in October 23, 2021 is what I wrote down here, from the listing agent that they were negotiating with the township about parkland. You guys knew before we knew that was on the table. So the lands between the end of the road and the creek have always been intended to be included as part of the plan of condo. That is the approval that was granted by the town. The concept of making it something other than land owned by the condo is a situation created by the developer, not the township. And I think it's important that you guys realize we've tried to work with the developer to consider his concepts, but it's not of our doing. We're reacting to proposals he brought forward to us. So from this point forward, there is a decision that is coming out of tonight. That decision will be sent back to the developer, and you're not going to get ownership and deeds tomorrow. We do not have at the township level a letter that shows how the conditions of draft plan of condo approval have been granted. We understand that some of the conditions are still not satisfied. They need to provide us a letter to outline with certainty how the conditions are cleared, and that usually includes supporting materials from various agents and whatnot as well. We do not have that material. I have not seen a draft of the plan of condo, which ultimately requires my signature on it before it can be sent to the registry office. There's also draft declarations that need to be provided to the township. They have not been provided as of yet. And there is also something called a condo assumption agreement that needs to occur. Once we land on what the condo looks like, then there needs to be a commitment that the condominium association will carry on with the site plan requirements going forward into the future. So all of that stuff is yet to be required, and it's out of our control. It'll be at the timing of the developer in terms of how quickly or slowly that all comes together. Ultimately, when it arrives on our desk, staff will do our best to be efficient and do the review in a timely fashion, but that's when it lands on our desk. I think that's where I can go for now, Mr. Chair. I don't know if you want to turn it over to Mr. Richardson.
Yes, sure. I can go next to Mr. Richardson, the Township Legal Counsel.
At this stage, Mr. Chairman, I'll simply reiterate some of what Mr. Trevel has just told you, and that is this, that in the presentation tonight, it indicates that residents were told on October the 23rd that there were negotiations underway with staff for a trail. In fact, the first that staff and myself heard about this was an email from a developer's consultant dated December the 20th, in which the proposal was put forward as a way to address the lands to the north. As Mr. Treble has indicated, we have been working with the developer's lawyer and consultants in attempting to find a solution. So the comments about the letter of a week ago indicating a bridge or a trail, those were both efforts to try and find a solution for a problem which doesn't emanate from the township at all. And we had communication from the developer solicitor last week that the trail concept is off the table, and candidly, we're recommending the same thing. So this will put it all back in the hands of the developer to resolve. We've made our efforts. We've been unsuccessful, but the problem did not emanate from the township in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't know if our Madam CAO would like to speak here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I guess there's important messages that the landowners or the property purchasers need to be aware of, and actually everybody who has been listening in on this, and that is that the West Lincoln Council has concluded that the need for the lands that the developer wishes to give to the township are not required at this point in time, and the costs associated with remediating the land and or developing something like a trail are not planned for in our current or our future capital plans. As it has already been stated, it was never a condition of the condominium approval for the township to take the lands. So this situation is now clearly and completely within the purview of the developer to conclude the planning processes, including the finalization of the condominium approval, so that the ownership can be transferred to the purchasers.
Thank you. And so, Leanne, I know that's probably a lot to take in there, but I don't know if you have any other questions or comments. I'll kind of give you a chance to rebuttal if there's something further you want to ask. We'll try to provide you an answer if we can.
Thank you. No, I think we just need to digest that a little bit. We've had a lot to process over the last number of months, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. And appreciate you taking the time and making the community and public aware of your situation, as unfortunate as it is. Hopefully there's a learning moment from this, and hopefully we don't ever see anybody else in this situation again. So that being the case, I'm going to move forward to my next item on the agenda. So I believe it's consent agenda. Sorry, wrong
Mr.
page.
Chair, sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, sorry. There's a recommendation, isn't there?
Thank you kindly.
Getting ahead of
Yes.
myself. So I got too many different pages here. Okay. So the recommendation is, I believe it's to be received. Do you have it? Okay. That the correspondence received from Leanne Timber Sharp regarding crossings on the 20 condo development and registration dated April 11th, 2022 be received. And if I can get a mover and a seconder for that, I have Councillor Ganan and Councillor Broderick. I get this point, if there's any other questions or comments, this is the time. Mr. Mayor, you have a question?
No, just a brief comment, and I thank you very much for those members that reach out and wrote us emails and I know it's no small task, but I'm very thankful that they express their concerns. I just wanted to and then Leanne for your presentation, very professional and well spoken. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other members? I guess I'll just add one last one there is that I think, council here, I guess going to speak for them. We're still very hopeful that this could be resolved in a timely manner. As staff had mentioned there, it's ultimately in the builder's hands and how they treat this moving forward. But I know myself, and having to hear from the residents and even tonight's presentation, am greatly saddened that we've had to even have to deal with this matter. I think a lot of people who move in our community have such a positive impression when they first come here, and this is no way any member should have to experience, especially the first 2 years there, and the concern of possibly being evicted, I think, is horrendous for a future purchaser. So, I know the concerns and, the allegations, remain out there, and I certainly hope they're nothing more than just that. And hopefully moving forward, we can, we get through this as quickly as possible so that they can be officially homeowners in our amazing community. So that being said, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. All right, so that puts that matter.
Did a mute happen?
Pardon me?
Oh, there we go. You're back.
Oh, sorry. I just said, when did I mute out there?
3 minutes.
Oh, okay. So it was before the vote? Could you guys hear me say the vote?
The vote was good.
Okay. So all that you missed there, I'll just mention real briefly, is I just expressed concerns that that these people had to go through such an ordeal, and that's not at all what we.
We caught that, so we were just ready to move on.
Okay, well, I'm just going to finish what I was stating because I want to make sure it's transparent and upfront because obviously it wasn't heard. And so, again...
It was heard.
How could you hear it if I was told there was...
No, you just need to go to consent items. That's all you got to do. That's all we missed.
Okay, so I'm gonna hold for a second here. Madam Clerk, can you please advise me when my microphone went muted?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Right before you started to discuss item 8, request to adjust items on the agenda.
Okay, yeah. So you heard everything up to that point, so I was just repeating myself?
That is correct, yes.
All right, I misunderstood what was said because I heard 3 minutes, and I assumed that meant before that, so I didn't want there to be anything that looked suspicious. Okay, so addressing items on the agenda, I go into Kevin here to see if there's anyone. Not seeing anyone, we can move forward to consent agenda items. All items listed are below are considered to be routine and non-controversial and can be approved by one resolution. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests it, in which case that item will be removed from the consent resolution and considered immediately following the adoption of the remaining consent agenda items. And there's a few here. So items 1, 2, and 3, and 4 being are hereby received for information. And 5, 6, 7, and 8 being are hereby received, and that the recommendations contained therein be adopted with the following exceptions of item numbers, and there's currently none. And so we have item number 1, a tech report number PD 47-2022, P-Bud Developments, Inc., site alteration application for Station Meadows West, Phase 1, number 3000-00222. Number 2 is technical report PD 37-2022, 197 Griffin Street, application for a zoning bylaw amendment. And it's Christopher Arnold, owner and MPG Planning Solutions agent, file number 1601-00522. Just trying to see we have some activity here. Number 3, technical report PD 46-2022, zoning bylaw amendment, Neil Carter, 2990 South Grimsby Road 18, file number 1601-00222. Number 4, information report PD 41-2022, Mars Home, Smithville Station tree planting, file number 2000-6505. Number 5, recommendation report PD 40-2022, Mars Home, Smithville West, Inc., temporary site plan authorizing bylaw for sale trailer, file number 2100-0222, number 6, recommendation report PD 18-2022, site plan amendment authorization 7484, Regional Road 20, John Cadman, Bristol Motors, file number 2100-01921. Number 7, recommendation report PD 38-2022, Industrial Park Road, Part 2 of Plan 30R 15914, 1794-733 Ontario Inc., AJ Clark and Associates, TriStar Contracting, authorizing bylaw, file number 2100-00322. And finally, 8, recommendation report PD 43-2022, driveway and entrances review, file number 1601-00720. So at this point, I'll ask if there's any items people would like to have removed. I have Mayor Bilsma.
Just 4.
Number 4.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else? I have a number 1. Anybody else? Okay, so at this point, items 1, sorry, Councilor Yonker, did you have your hand up? Okay, so items 1 and 4 have been removed. So I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder at this time. I have Councilor Ganan and Councilor Trombetta. And any other questions, or I guess there's no questions, so I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries. So we have item number 1 and 4. I'll go to 1 first. So I'll start with Councilor Broderick. So she'll be the mover. If I can get a seconder. I got Councilor Ganan. So Councilor Broderick, you can speak to number 1.
Thank you. Just a brief question through you, Chair, to our Director of Planning. I see the conditions that are listed in the permit for the site alteration. Is there a possibility of having an additional condition that would stipulate some kind of a reasonable timeline for the work, and especially that of the trucking portion, that perhaps maybe there would be some better transparency for the public, especially the neighboring area, as to what they would expect as far as how long this work would take?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if that's okay. I will confess I'm kind of 2 minds on this issue. The lands have been inside the urban boundary for quite some time, and in fact, it's the swap lands that came in 2015. So the landowners have known now for the better part of 6 or 7 years that these lands are coming forth for development. And so from that perspective, you know, it's this issue of change, and the landowners just sort of have to get used to the fact that change is coming. Coupled with that, though, is the fact that 3,500 to 4,000 loads of fill coming down South Grimsby 5 causes our Public Works Department major concerns. So you might think that making it happen quick to appease the neighbors is the right action, but Public Works might be quite concerned about that if we have a rainy season. So I think we need to be somewhat flexible and account for the various elements that are relevant to this discussion. And I think for me, a key one that I have to go back and sort out is exactly how best to work with Public Works to accommodate access to the site down South Grimsby 5. So through you, Mr. Chair, it's not exactly a direct answer in terms of a timeline. We certainly will have a discussion around how this happens before a rec report's put together. But to give you a commitment that we're going to make them have it done before the end of June to appease the residents, I'm not convinced I can commit to that.
Through you, Chair, to the Director, your answer to, or somewhat of an answer to my question, is definitely appreciated, and I think that information is fulsome in order to give the neighbors as well as the general public of the village of Smithville, because it will have an impact on them as well too with that increased truck traffic. That understanding that a timeline might not be of the best interest of our roads, and we'll look forward to further information as it comes available. So thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Great question there. So any other members of committee have any other questions or comments related to this item? Okay, I have a mover and seconder for that, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that carries. So we'll go down to item number 4 now, information report, PD 41, Mars Homes, Smithville tree planting. And so, Mr. Mayor, it was yours, so I'll have you as the mover. Can I get a seconder? Got Councilor Ganan again. So we'll, sorry, Councilor Yonker, you're a little bit delayed. That being the case, Mr. Mayor, you can proceed.
Okay, so this is with respect to the I guess, inability to plant a tree on the front of most of the houses, maybe because of room or something like that. So I just, my concern is the report kind of states that Mars is going to find spots for these trees on the survey somewhere, but not necessarily in the building fabric in the lots. And I'm just kind of curious to know whether there isn't an ability, or where possible, if it can't be planted in the front yard, if it can be planted in the backyard. My concern is, and I'm, you know, I guess if you were to view this from above, you know, having tree cover over the roofs and into backyards and stuff is for me a bit of a priority in terms of, you know, shade and I'm just curious whether it's possible to direct the builder to plant the boulevard trees if they can't plant them in the front, if they can plant them in the back.
So
backyards if that's available.
Okay, I think you might have misunderstood things, but I'm going to go to the director first to clarify the understanding behind that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can answer partly. Mr. Boerma has been much more directly involved in this discussion, so he might also want to have some words in response, Mr. Chair, as well. So, you know, the way the municipal engineering standards are written, it contemplates that developers are planting these trees on township property for the benefit of the public. So I think we've always just focused on looking at places to put them that are township-owned lands, and of course backyards wouldn't qualify in that regard. So that's why we've looked to the park, and we've identified that the park inside the development would be an appropriate place to plant trees. I'm with you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's valuable that we have trees and we have canopy, and of course the length of time it takes for a tree to develop into anything that provides much in the way of shade is a long time in the West Lincoln soil. So it's going to take some time. I can certainly go back and talk to Public Works around alternate locations for tree plantings, but the focus of the municipal engineering standards is mainly in township-owned boulevards and other spaces, including flankage yards in the event of a corner lot as well. So that's kind of the focus that this report is looking at, is where alternate locations on public property would be. Mr. Boerma has been directly involved in these discussions with Mars. I don't know if any other discussions occurred or not.
Okay, well, go to Mr. Boerma if he's has anything further to contribute.
Not really. I apologize. My camera has stopped working, so I can't turn that on. But
oh, no worries.
Yep. What the director of public work or director of planning has said is all correct. We are working with Public Works to have those trees appropriately sited in the park, and this is over and above what Mars is required to do according to their approved engineering plans. So we are thankful that they came to the table to provide for these trees, but there also are ongoing private property matters between Mars and private property owners, which may not get any resolution through this process, but they might still continue pursuing Mars for trees that they may have paid for through their sale agreement on their private property.
Yeah, and I understood that. So thank you, Mr. Directors of both directors, 1 and 2. So appreciate that. Again, whenever trees are a passion of mine, and whenever they're on there, I want to make sure we get as many in the ground and they can be as effective as possible. As they say, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. So thank you. No further, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any other members of the committee? Not seeing or hearing any, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that carries. So we're going to move forward to, there's no communications tonight, so we're going to move forward to staff reports. Report item P4022, Planner Megan Burbick and Director of Planning and Building Brian Treble, and it's a recommendation report, file number PD42 2022, zoning bylaw amendment, Van Andel and Buverhoff, file number 1601-004, 00422. And the recommendation is that report PD 42-2022 regarding the recommendation report zoning bylaw amendment Van Andel and Buverhoff, file number 1601-00422 dated April 11th, 2022 be received. And that an application for zoning bylaw amendment 1601-00422 submitted by Van Andel and Buverhoff and a corresponding zoning bylaw amendment be approved, bylaw be approved and passed, and that staff be and hereby muscle memory. Staff be authorized to circulate the notice of decision for the zoning bylaw amendment and with corresponding 20-day appeal period. So I need a mover and seconder for that one. I got Councilor Yonker and Councilor Trombetta. Any questions or comments? Not seeing or hearing any. I call the question. All those in favor? And that passes. Carries, sorry. So we'll move on to the next item, item 4122, and it's a recommendation report, PD 45, 2022, building fees bylaw, review in accordance with comprehensive user fee report. And the recommendation is that report 45, 2022, regarding recommendation report 2022, building fees bylaw, review in accordance with comprehensive user fee report, dated April 11, 2022, be received. And that a bylaw be passed similar to the draft bylaw found at attachment 1 to this report to establish new building permit fees effective May 1st, 2022. And that a bylaw be passed similar to the draft bylaw found at attachment 2 to this report to establish new swimming pool permit fees to take effect on May 1st, 2022. So I need a mover and seconder, Councilor Gannan and Mayor Bylsma. Any questions or comments? Not seeing or hearing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that carries. So we'll move on to other business. I'll look around the table, see if there's any other members of committee here. I got Mayor Bylsma, so I'll go to Mayor Bylsma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to highlight one thing that last Friday afternoon, I had the pleasure of breaking some ground. So I was joined with some other dignitaries, Sam Osterhoff, our MPP, at Cairn Christian School. They're going to put an addition on, and it speaks to the growth within our community, but a growth within the Christian school community as well. The students were certainly excited. They had plotted out all where the 4 new classrooms are going to go. And they enjoyed understanding that the dignitaries were sitting in the future site of the washroom. All that to say, it was a joy and a gladness to see a school that has been so much a part of the community is growing, and the student body was certainly excited, as were many parents in the community. So I just wanted to highlight that groundbreaking took place, and look forward to someday doing a ribbon cutting. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councilor Trombetta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, to you, to the mayor. Mr. Mayor, just curious, this is the second time in 2 weeks that there's been groundbreaking ceremonies and no notification to any members of council. Last week was Highland, this week was another one. So I'm just curious in the correspondence, is staff getting the correspondence and it's not to members of committee or council, or is it just coming directly to you? And not to center you out here, Mr. Mayor, but this is something I struggled with the last administration, where a lot of council was left in the dark for certain groundbreaking things, like especially when a new business comes into town. I wanted to touch on it last week, and now it's 2 times in 2 weeks.
So let me clarify. So of course, each circumstance is unique, and I just to be clear, I only highlighted last week's announcement, or I think it's now 2 weeks ago, announcement. I highlighted, I did not participate. It was a family affair. I did find out through ulterior means, actually through the media, that it indeed did take place. And I just wanted to, like you, I just wanted to highlight a new business came into town, but I did not take part in that ribbon cutting ceremony. I was not invited. It was certainly a family affair, and that, of course, was the Highland Packers. I was, of course, I don't get to necessarily invite. Like, I was invited to this one. I think it was a controlled invitation. I did accept because I was invited to, and I think it's. But I don't. There was nothing in there that I had to forward on. So I don't know if you want to advise me or suggest, I don't know necessarily how to deal with that. Like, it's not my place to re-invite, I guess. I don't know. You can correct me if I'm wrong, or if you have a different opinion. I received an invitation. As far as I know, they will maybe I can't speculate to what their reasons are to having in a controlled group, but I appreciate what you're saying, and I think that's part of what we do here is if we do have those opportunities, I mean, it's happened in the past too, where other businesses have kind of reached out, and it didn't necessarily go out far and wide either, and I guess you get invited to what you get invited to, and it's not really your place to invite others to that. So I think when each one is kind of on a event by event basis, at this point I'm kind of throwing up my hands, going I really don't know the protocol on that. It was certainly not my place to invite the councillors, and I'm making you aware that it did take place. And yeah, Councillor Trombetta, I don't know.
No, just because the way it was sounded last week is that you attended a ribbon cutting ceremony, but now
no, I didn't attend. No,
the way it came across was that aspect. I don't know, Mr. Mayor. I was just wanted to know what the correspondence was, if it was directed to you or it goes through the clerk's office to the mayor's office, and then, like I said, there's not many councillors that are attached, especially big things for groundbreaking ceremonies. Usually that's a collaborate sometimes thing, especially with ward councillors You've had me there in the past. You've reached out in the past at certain things. I'm just saying these two times was kind of it made me just throw up a flag of wonder. What's the correspondence and what's happening?
So I'm sorry you're just kind of misunderstood, because I think I did say something 2 weeks ago that I did not intend, but I did find out about it, and it was through the media. So I want to provide clarification that I did not attend that, but I did find out about it, and I wanted to highlight it. And then this one, I would say that anything that comes through the clerk's office or through the CAO is shared with everybody. This is not an issue of the clerk, but my email is out there, and so it was an invite to me and to Mr. Osterhoff, Mr. Allison to attend, and I suppose what I could do again, I don't know if there's even COVID protocols and stuff about how many people can attend or anything like that. I'm not going to speculate. It's an event by event. If I feel that they're urging me to invite other councillors, I would gladly do so and make that available, as I have in the past.
You know what, Mr. Mayor, you answered it perfectly. I just was kind of curious because, again, it's back-to-back weeks, which you hear these announcements and you're kind of left here thinking, I didn't hear about it, right? So
I will say this: it's exciting to do them again. After 2 years, we haven't been able to do them, and I think we've missed opportunities to showcase businesses that are thriving enough to do an expansion, or institutions that are doing an expansion. I think these are good news stories, and if I can share them with council and invite them to council with council. I know the SWIFT announcement was definitely something that I had discussed about including. There's some communications that would prove that made sure that you and Councillor Rayner were invited to the SWIFT, because it was predominantly in the Ward 1 region. So that was about four weeks ago, and I'm glad that you did attend with Councillor Rayner. So that was
and like I said, you have mentioned in the past, it's just been back-to-back weeks. So I was just getting some clarification. Thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will mention just on that topic too, I found out the night before, and I reached out to their executive director, Kevin there, and congratulated them, and unfortunately it was just, they had an online invite to, I guess, anyone they didn't reach, and so I just, unfortunately, just too short a notice for myself to find out the night before, and otherwise I would have been able to be there, as I imagine other councillors would have as well. But I do appreciate the explanation, but there was something on Facebook, it just kind of came in the 11th hour. I think I saw Councillor Yonker. Okay, yeah, Councillor Yonker, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Councillor Ghanaian to help me with on how to say the name of the only winery that's hosting our first live after 5. I can see Cheryl Ghanaian smiling, but if you can name of the I just struggle with this one, and John is going to be mad at me, but we're looking forward to having our first after 5 live business this coming Tuesday.
At Domain Kalus.
Kalus.
I know it just sounds so simple, but you're just I make it complicated. Thank you, ma'am. So looking forward to that happening this coming week, at 5.
Okay, thank you. I guess, as well, we have, oh my goodness, it's on the tip of my tongue. This Wednesday, I believe it's this Wednesday, I can go to our director of planning, but we have the open house. The community open house regarding the official plan, I believe it is. Yeah, so actually, Mr. Director, if you could actually just give a quick note on that, but I believe it's this Wednesday, I want to say 6 o'clock, but I probably have the time, but just as a reminder to the community, there's an opportunity for them to, I guess, see that presentation in some capacity. Am I remembering that correctly?
Mr. Chair, can I ask Garrett to respond? I think he'll have the exact details because he was the one that sent the notice out.
Correct.
I don't have the notice in front of me. No, that's okay.
Sorry, is this the notice for the on April 27th?
No, the open house this week.
I think it's this week, is it not?
Oh, yes. So the public meeting portion of that is on April 27th, and then an open house is running on the Plans Smithville website. Let me just pull up the notice for a moment.
April 27th is our night.
Yes.
Yes, so the online open house, virtual open house will be held from April 13th to April 20th via the plansmithville.ca website. And there are opportunities to participate through providing comments and flipping through a virtual engagement platform. And as I mentioned, the virtual public meeting set for our special council meeting is on April 27th.
Excellent.
Just for fun facts, this notice was placed in 4 separate editions of 2 newspapers over a period of 2 weeks. And we mailed nearly 1,000 notices out to residents, both within the study area and on 120 meters of either side. And we've emailed approximately 500 landowners, residents, and agency emails with this notice. So.
Excellent. So there's really no disputing. We haven't made our effort, including tonight, to get this message out there. So we certainly appreciate that. So that being the case, I believe that's it. I don't see any other comments or questions for anyone. There's no new business unless someone has new business. So at this point, I'm going to adjourn at the hour of 9:44 p.m. Good night, everyone, and we'll see you next time.